Before the start of this interview, I just want to let you know that my guest, Dave Hsu, is actually a friend of mine, not one of the strangers I reached out to. Dave and I used to play basketball together, but lost touch over the years. Dave is a podcaster, family physician, and father, and has a bunch of funny stories. And I thought it would be really interesting to have him on the channel. So please sit back and enjoy the interview with Dave. All right, how's it going? My name is Spencer, and welcome to Chats with Spencer, where I ask fun and interesting questions to my guests so you and I can learn a little bit more about them. Today, my guest is Dave Hsu. He is a podcaster, an avid basketball fan, a father, a husband, and on top of all that, he's a family physician. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thanks, Spencer. Thanks for having me here.
All right, we're going to get started with the first question, and that's, who are you?
Who am I?
Well, who are you?
You summed it up pretty well. Like, those are my main things in life.
Okay.
My name's Dave Hsu. I'm a second-generation Chinese-Canadian. My parents were from Taiwan originally, and I grew up and spent most of my life in Toronto, except for a few years where I went away for schooling. When I was in high school, my parents said, "You better become a doctor when you grow up." And they sent me away to university at Cornell University with that in mind. I graduated after 4 years and got into Queen's University in Kingston for medical school. So I attended there for 4 years where I was trying to figure out what I really wanted to do. And then matched to family medicine residency at the University of Toronto. So I did that for 2 years. And it was there that I met my wife. And it was there that I got a bit more serious about medicine. And when I graduated, I started practicing medicine at a couple of clinics in the greater Toronto area. And my niche is that most of my patients speak Mandarin. So my parents, most of my parents have been keeping on me to learn Chinese and speak Chinese and sending me to Chinese school for most of my childhood, and I hated it. Right, like I was one of those, like, Saturday morning, like, lying in bed hoping that maybe they forgot that I live here and won't drag me out to Chinese school. And I went for a few years, but I didn't really learn that much, but I was able to converse still.
Okay.
And so when I graduated, I thought, you know what, why don't I try seeing patients in Chinese? And so I started working as a family physician at a clinic at Pacific Mall and another clinic up in North York. And I've ended up doing both of those for many, many years until I moved all my practice over to North York. So I'm still at the same clinic that I was when I graduated residency. It's been 12 years, 13 years almost. And 99% of my patients speak Chinese, either Cantonese or Mandarin, and I speak Mandarin to them most of the day. So over that time, my Chinese has gotten better. And over the last few years, you know, aside from the medicine part, I started dabbling in other things that I'm interested in. So we started, you know, teaching medical students. So there was like this whole education component, which has been fun, coaching basketball. And in the last couple of years, I started thinking, you know what, I really want to make a podcast. Like, I listened to a bunch of podcasts that people I knew had friends that made. I was like, I think I can do this. And I had been listening to podcasts in the car, like, since I'd started working. And so the last few years, I found a few guys who are also into it. So we've been recording episodes, you know, editing our episodes and having a good time. It's actually been really fun. And it's been nice to do something a little bit different from work. So that's
for sure.
Career and hobby-wise. Yeah. And mainly what I do is the fathering part. That's my whole life. I'm a parent of a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they keep my hands really, really busy. So, you know, between work, kids, the hobbies of podcasting and stuff happen like after 9:30 o'clock at night, a few nights a week, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. It's crazy that for me to imagine that you're doing 3 separate podcasts. Maybe you can just give a quick rundown on what each of them are.
Sure. So the very first podcast I did was a show called What's Up Docs. It's a show where me and a medical student go back and forth like once a month and talk about, you know, his training in medicine, because he's, you know, going through medical school. And then I compare it with my own recollections of my training in medicine, and we'll kind of bounce ideas about our career and professional development. It was a idea that we came up with because when I started doing podcasts, I thought I should do something related to medicine because I didn't really know what else I could talk about. And that made sense. After we did a bunch of episodes of that, I thought, you know what? I had a friend of mine in Ottawa who I knew would be perfect for doing a show. And when I told him I was doing a podcast, like I just happened to mention it on a conversation, I heard like his voice pick up just a notch, like, oh, really? So a few days later, it occurred to me, I was like, he wants to do it. So I sent him a text message. I'm like, dude, we should do a podcast together. It took him about 3 seconds to reply. And he was like, I'm in. So that's where the genesis of the second show started. So him and I do a show called Medical Dads, where we once a week post an episode where we talk about some aspect of parenting that relates to medicine sometimes. But some of the episodes are also just kind of offbeat and about random topics. So it's more of a generalized parenting episode that's aimed is to give people a little bit of medical education, but also just to share parenting stories, because when you're a parent and you're in the trenches, there's a lot going on. And sometimes it's nice to know that other people are going through the same things you are. So that was the second show. And it was a little bit medical still. As I did about a year of that, I started to think, you know what, I really want to try to make another show and have it be unrelated to medicine. And it's actually a little bit similar to what you're doing, Spencer, which is the show is called Unique Stories. And basically, I try to interview people that I know or whose life stories are of some interest to me. And we just talk about some topic. So I basically act as a talk show host on this show. And we've had a bunch of guests who've, talked to me about their journey to come to Canada or how they ended up in the field that they are. So it's been an interesting experience getting to know people better, getting them to share their stories. And for me to do something that's completely unrelated to medicine, that's the best part.
Yeah, for sure. I would highly suggest checking out Dave's podcast there. I'd say they're like really candid and fun. I wouldn't say it's very relatable. It just sounds like a bunch of friends talking.
Yeah, basically. Casual.
Yeah, it's very casual. Definitely worth checking out. All right, Dave. The second question is, what is something that makes you happy?
My children make me happy. They also make me very, very angry frequently throughout the day. But at the end of the day, they do make me quite happy. When my daughter was born, my dad said to me, he said, your children will bring you great joy in life. And he has Alzheimer's and he was starting to get a bit confused.
Okay.
But and he's also an Asian dad. So you know how like Chinese dads never tell you anything about their feelings?
Oh, yeah.
When he told me that my children would bring me joy, indirectly, he was saying that I guess we brought him some joy too, which was a nice thing. But it really is true.
No, that's a good story and a good point to any viewers out there who don't have Asian parents. Talking about feelings is not a thing that happens very often. All right, Dave. Well, what is one of your fondest childhood memories?
Oh, fondest childhood memories. When I was in grade 1, I spent a year of my life living in Taiwan.
Okay.
At that time, my sister, when my sister is 4 years younger than me, she was born, and then after a few months, she developed a lot of allergies. And we were like, a struggling new immigrant family in Toronto. And my mom was having difficulty, and my mom and my dad having difficulty looking after her. Right. And nowadays you would see like, in this situation to be all these grandparents hovering nearby and extra hands, but we were like the only people. We were on our own in Toronto. So around, I don't know how old my sister was exactly, but I was in grade 1 when my parents said, you know what, we're going to take both of you back to Taiwan for a year. So my parents actually kind of temporarily, moved apart. So my dad stayed in Toronto and worked.
Okay.
And then my mom took the two of us to live with my grandmother in Taiwan. So live with her mom. And also my dad's mom also lives in Taipei. So kind of splitting time between these two houses. And for me, it was crazy because we were this immigrant family in Toronto. We had no relatives. I had met my grandmother, I had met them because they had visited a bit.
Yes.
But other than that, you just felt isolated. There were no uncles, there were no cousins, there's nobody. And suddenly we land in Taiwan, and then I realized I'm a part of this huge family because my dad had like 6 other siblings. My mom had a couple siblings. And they have cousins. And suddenly you're in this giant family, and everyone gathers at grandma's house for dinner every night of the week, right? Or grandma once a month makes like a dumpling afternoon. Like you spend the whole afternoon folding dumplings with your grandmother and your grandfather, and then you boil them all, and the whole house smells like dumpling soup at the end of it. It was just this amazing feeling of feeling included after being in Canada for most of my life, feeling like, oh, we're just 4 people on our own. And we stayed for about a year, and then I came back. And my sister came back like another year after that. But that time period of my life where I got to know all these other family members has always been something I've remembered.
Nice. Have any of them come over since that time?
Yes. So after a few years, like by the time I got to high school, some of them started to come over, right? So my dad,
nice.
Helped his brother and his sister apply. So we have more extended family. But I think because of the amount of time that had passed and the distances involved, the reality is we're not super tight as a family.
That's fair.
Right? So sometimes I look at my wife's family, like, they've all been here. They all grew up together. It's a bit of a different vibe, but it's still nice to know that you're not alone. So at the end of the day, that's the nice part.
No, that's a cool memory. Thanks for sharing. All right, next question is, if you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be and why?
So this question gave me such a headache because you sent me the list of questions. And I looked it over, and every answer I thought of sounded lame. And I used to be on like there was a year where I did like medical school interviews, right? So we asked prospective students this question because we had asked this question. And I found the answers to be less than interesting. But my problem now as an adult is I realize there is nobody that I really want to meet. Most of the people in the world who have done amazing things, like things that I really respect or admire, I feel like they would be really bad company at dinner. And if I met them, I would just be disappointed. Like I'm certain that if I met Cristiano Ronaldo, he would creep me out and I wouldn't be able to relate to him, right? And I don't know if meeting George Lucas would do anything for me as an adult.
Yeah, I don't know.
But the one guy that I will say, even as a full-grown adult, I'm allowed fandom of one dude. It's going to be Jeremy Lin. If I got to meet one guy in the world, and just mad props to Jeremy Lin, that's the guy I want to meet. Because when I was a kid, the idea that a Chinese guy could play professional basketball without being 7 foot tall and, make it against all odds, to me, like, that is the most unbelievable story. And I would be happy just to meet him once.
Fair enough. I've heard really good things about Jeremy. He seems like a really chill guy, very down to earth kind of thing.
Right.
Sorry, go on.
Well, that's the reason I want to meet him, because I feel like, okay, we could actually probably sit down and talk about podcasts or like, COVID-19 without him being a jerk about it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. What's one thing that annoys you, Dave?
People who are passive aggressive. I feel like if people want something, just say so rather than trying to nudge you along without giving you the actual information or without telling you. Just tell me already.
Yeah, for sure. Just be straightforward. Don't beat around the bush. Don't assume I know what you're saying. Just tell me to my face kind of thing, right?
Absolutely.
All right. This one is, what is an artist, a band, or a group that you think people should check out?
Okay. This one's easy. I love this Taiwanese movie director named Edward Yang. He's like one of these indie film guys that people, unless you're really into like indie or foreign films, you won't know. But he directed a movie called EE. It's spelled YIYI. And I had never heard of him. But when I was in college, in my senior year at college, one Friday night, I went to, Cornell Cinema, and they were playing this movie. And it had just played at Cannes, where he had won a prize for it, which I didn't know. I only went to the movie because I saw that it was a Chinese director. I saw the movie. It blew me away. I went back to the movie theater Saturday night and watched the whole thing again. That's never happened in my life, that I would watch a 3.5-hour movie twice in 2 days. And probably half the things I love about storytelling, or the things that I've learned about how to tell stories and how to construct a narrative, I learned from this movie. This is a movie that I think everyone should check out.
All right, cool answer. Has he done anything that's more mainstream that like in recent years? No, he's just really obscure.
he was part of this thing called the Taiwanese New Wave Cinema, which started in
Okay.
the 80s. So he
Okay.
has a bunch of older movies.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are hard to watch, and they're not all as good as this one.
Mm-hmm.
He had another movie called A Brighter Summer Day, which was a few years earlier in the early
Okay.
90s. And
Okay.
then this movie, EE. These two movies are considered his masterpieces. And the sad
Okay.
thing is he died a few years after this in his 50s.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
he didn't, if he had lived longer, we would have more art from him, but it stopped there. So unfortunately, but if you ever have the inkling to try something different, just
Okay.
watch EE. It is the best movie. I recommend it to everybody.
All right. Cool. Well, try to check it out. What is one thing you'd like to do or achieve in your lifetime?
I want to be a novelist. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
But
novelist.
yeah, I just want to write books. That's it. I don't care if people read them. I mean, it's obviously nice if people would read them. I don't care if it becomes famous. I just want to tell stories.
Particular genre you would be writing?
I mean, it could change with time. Right now, what I'm
Okay.
most interested in is the immigrant experience,
Okay.
because I felt like growing up, there weren't any characters that I could relate to that much, right? In books or television or movies. I mean, this is a common thing that many Asian Americans or, Asian Canadians have
Yes.
expressed, right? And anytime you saw like an Asian character, you'd be like, oh, that's us. Like I tell my parents, right? Or, as a Chinese Canadian, any character that was remotely non-white, I would be like, check it out. Like I could relate to this, right? And so part of my mission, I think, is to try to, help promote inclusiveness and diversity in writing. But I think one way to do that is, to share personal stories about ourselves, but just also to tell personal stories about characters and about, the immigrant experience, so that people start to understand what it's about.
Yeah, for sure. And especially in Canada, I think not just Asians, but like, a lot of people came here and there's similar experiences as well. And yeah, like you said, it's just hearing that story so people can relate. Maybe a lot of these stories are untold and, it's one way for us all to connect with each other.
And you realize you're not as different as you think.
Yes.
Right? Because if we don't hear those
exactly.
stories, we just live off stereotypes of these groups. But after you realize that, that other dude, they also, have the same fears, the same, the same crises happen in their families. Like there's still death and illness. We're all dealing with the same things. I think that's what will help, us as people, figure things out.
Yeah, definitely a good point. All right. What's one thing that people would find surprising about you?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
One thing people would find surprising about you.
Surprising.
So it could be a hidden talent, an odd interest maybe, or just a weird story.
Something that's really surprising about me. Give me 1 second. Let me think.
Yeah, no problem.
Surprising thing. This one is very, very difficult. I feel like I'm pretty open. I feel like I'm like an open book and everyone knows everything about me already. I'll pass on this one.
Okay, we'll pass. And if it comes to you, just let me know, and we can go with that. Okay, and this question is, I'm going to kind of reword it, but how would you like your impact to be on the world?
I would like to be remembered as someone who looked out for the little guy, was generally helpful, and cared about people.
Yeah, I definitely get that feeling from you. All right, so we're going to just change gears a bit, and we're going to go to some more just like quick questions, but feel free to elaborate on them.
Absolutely.
All right, first question is, favorite sports team?
Duke University basketball team. Specifically, the 1992 version.
Very specific, Dave. Dogs or cats?
Dogs. Cats make me itchy.
Okay, that's fair. Spring or fall?
Fall. Basketball season starts in the fall.
That's totally fair. M&Ms or Smarties?
I don't even know that there's a difference between the two. I guess I'll pick Smarties. Their advertising is better.
Okay, but actually this is the Canadian question. So if I have a Canadian guest on, I say M&Ms or Smarties because apparently Smarties aren't a thing in the US. Stefan, Dave and I, a friend of Dave and I, told me that recently. So there is a difference.
There is a difference. Smarties.
There's definitely a difference.
There's the blue one, I guess. That's the difference to me.
All right, Dave. You need to buy a pack of M&Ms and Smarties and tell me there's not a difference. They taste way different.
I'm not a candy guy. I'm really like a potato chip dude. If you asked me for potato chips, there would be a more elaborate answer.
Okay. Well, what's your favorite potato chip flavor?
Sour cream and bacon.
All right. Okay. You kind of answered this, but I guess you can give another one. What's one of your favorite movies?
Other than that one, okay. Episode 4, Star Wars: A New Hope. I said 50% of everything. 50% of everything I learned about storytelling is from this Chinese movie. The other 50% is from Episode 4.
Okay. Let's see. Would you rather have a relaxing or adventurous vacation?
Put me down for relaxing, 100%.
Is that like even before you had kids?
Absolutely, before I had kids.
Okay.
After you have kids, it's impossible to do either, really. you can only have relaxing minutes. Like you can relax by the pool for 5 minutes. That's it.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. What's the best place you have visited?
My favorite place in the world is Taipei. I mean, I always, because of what I told you about living there before, it always feels like you're going home. And the food there is amazing, and the snacks and the drinks, like it's just a great place to visit. I probably would feel differently if I actually had to live there year round.
Fair enough. Do you try to make it back every year? Or
No.
I assume with the kids, no. But
No, it's been many years. We went back after we got married, and
Okay.
since then, none because of the kids. But we've been telling the kids, that we should really go back there one of these days when this whole virus thing ends.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. What is your go-to snack at a convenience store?
A bag of Doritos or a bag of Cheetos. I told you I'm a salty guy.
All right, but Doritos, like just like nacho cheese or any specific flavor?
Probably the blue one, Cool Ranch. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I could get behind that.
Yeah.
All right. What was one of your favorite childhood TV shows?
Do you remember Different Strokes?
Yes.
Yes. With Mr. Drummond and Gary Coleman as
yeah. What you talk about, Willis?
Yeah. That was my favorite show. One day I used to watch it in syndication, like after school, and they preempted it. At some point, like all these syndicated shows fade, right? And a cartoon came on. I started crying. I was like, "Where is Arnold?" Yeah. So that.
How young were you when you started watching that? Do you remember, or like roughly? I guess.
I think I was definitely watching it in grade 1, 2, and 3, around that age, and I think it probably ended around grade 3.
Interesting choice for a 6-year-old.
Yes.
But I can get behind it. It's all right.
Not the type of show I would allow my 6-year-old to watch now, that's for sure.
Good times. All right. So these are some questions that are more geared towards you. Do you have a specific sporting memory? Could be from your childhood, could be from adulthood, that like really stands out to you. So it could be, I guess in your case, it could be a coaching moment, or it could be you as a player moment, like a personal sporting moment.
There was one game when we played. Actually, it wasn't the year you were on the team. The year after, because we played recreational basketball together, right? But I think a year or two after you left the team, I had one game where I hit 3 3-pointers in a row and 4 foul shots in a row, all in like a 4-minute span, right? So in a 4-minute span, I had my career high in points. It was absolutely unbelievable. Never happened again, but it just shows that it could happen to anyone. So keep plugging away.
Yeah, man. When you get hot, just shoot the ball, man. Okay, this is a basketball related question. who would be your all-time starting five? And I'm not going to limit you to positions, so you don't have to pick necessarily a center. But
this is a good question. This is like a full hour podcast answer, really. If we're gonna simplify it, I would put for my favorite players. So are these my favorite players, or these are the best players?
No, like you could. We'll just go with your favorite. We'll just say favorite for now.
So guys that I would love to have on my team are a lot of them are the classics. So the point guard is going to be Magic Johnson.
Okay.
Right. Larry Bird's got to be on the team. Like I've read every Larry Bird and Magic Johnson book and DVD and whatever. I'll put Shaq at center because at his peak he was just unbelievable.
Yeah, you can't stop that.
Yeah. I'm gonna stick Grant Hill on the floor. He was actually one of my all-time favorite players until the injuries took a toll. But class act, favorite player. Last dude probably doesn't belong on the list, but inevitably he is one of my favorite guys. I'm always Googling him to see what he's up to. It's Rasheed Wallace, the dude that's known for like talking to referees and getting kicked out of games. I started following him when he was in college, and I just love that dude.
That is an interesting choice. That is definitely an interesting choice. I'll give you that one. What's one thing you wish you knew before becoming a dad?
I wish that before, I mean, you know how when you become a parent, everyone's like, oh, it's going to be really busy. It's going to be really busy. So you should know that, right? But there was a part of me that was in denial. So I think my daughter was like a month old, and we were like, it was late night. She might have been fussing about something. And I was really frustrated. I said to my wife, like, oh man, I haven't worked out in like 6 weeks or something, right? She looks at me, she's like, what on earth are you talking about? You have a kid. And then it clued in. I'm not going to be working out for years, right? So I think that is a real reality check, that when you have kids, that they just totally upend your life in ways you can't imagine.
Yeah, I don't think there's any number of books or warnings you can get until the reality actually hits, right?
Yeah. It's one of those things where you think you'll be different. You think I'll still have time to do something, right? Like you don't realize that it's everything, all encompassing. And actually now looking back on it, I don't really remember how we used to spend all our free time back in the day.
You probably just didn't have any, Dave. Okay, so this is a question regarding your podcast. You don't have to necessarily think about it specifically about one, but what's your hope with your podcast? Like, what's your end goal? Would you like it to become massive, or are you just maybe talking to someone specific, that kind of thing?
I mean, the thing about podcasting and writing and even doing videos, I mean, it's always nice to have an audience, right?
Yes, for sure.
So I think we're always like hoping that, more people will tune in. But really, like I'm not really there to try to make money. My job is okay. Like I'm doing okay. I actually enjoy going to work, so I don't need to like quit. I just actually just like the opportunity to like grow new skills and get to know people and tell stories and hear people's stories and, help other people tell their stories too. So as long as I can do that and there's an audience for this stuff, that makes me happy. And it's kind of nice that, I have a job as a physician. So I'm not sitting there thinking like, how do I get to 1 million views? Like, how do I get to 1 million views so I can pay the bills, right? I don't have to think about any of those things. So you can take things from more of the standpoint of being an artist and, just creating the stuff that you want to create, which is nice.
I think that's fair. And I think that the channels that are successful are the ones that kind of just did it for the sake of doing it. I'm making these videos because I like making videos. You're making podcasts because you like podcasts. But if you're doing it for the end goal of, okay, I want to be the next, I don't know, whoever, some massive YouTuber or massive podcaster, I don't think it's going to end well. I mean, not to say that's not possible, but rather it's, kind of an unhealthy way to look at it, the results.
The reality is that most of them don't succeed, right? And the amount of time that you invest in a project quickly, doesn't make sense from a financial angle, right? Like
no,
for us, it's always like you could make more at work. Just go to work and see 3 more patients, and that's more efficient in terms of your pocketbook than doing another show, right? Where you're toiling at it for hours and hours and hours and there's no obvious result. So that's not what it's about. It's really just about doing stuff because you enjoy it and it's fun, and it's fun to meet people and talk and share. That's it.
For sure. Last question. Well, second last question, but do you just have an interesting story you'd like to share, Dave? Just, I don't know, about your childhood or just, I don't know, something that happened to you as a doctor.
I think the most interesting thing for me that I can think of off the top of my head
Okay.
is that if you actually met me like 7 or 8 years ago, actually you did meet me at that time. That's when we
Yes, I
met,
did.
right?
Yes,
And
yes.
you asked me about my job, and you saw how I worked.
Hmm.
I was always coming home from work and just kind of burned out and being like, oh
Okay.
man, like I saw 40 people today. There were three
Mm.
crazies. I hate my job. Like we need a
Yeah.
holiday. Like this is frequently
Mm-hmm.
like me barking around the house, like telling my wife that, we needed a break. Like this job sucks.
Yeah.
And that has changed. Like you don't hear me actually, if you were a fly on the wall in my house, I don't talk like that much anymore.
Nice.
And I think it's because of all these other things I'm doing. And it started off with me taking on students and doing more teaching. So originally, the first 7 or 8 years as a physician, for me, I was just trying to stay afloat and, get
Mm.
my skills, make sure I'm
Yes.
not, dangerous in a doctor's outfit, right?
Yes. Yes.
And once I kind of got more comfortable with that, I had never thought that I would be doing teaching. I actually thought when I was a college student, at some point before going into medicine, I thought I would like to be a professor. But it was kind
Mm.
of this unformed thought and idea. But when I got into medicine, I didn't really know what I was doing as a doctor. I was kind of like, I kind of had this feeling like my parents want me to be a doctor, but this isn't that fun. Like, why am I here? It took me a long time to get my head around those things and answer it. So then for most of my career as I was working, the last thing I thought was that I should be teaching other younger people like how to become a
Mm.
doctor.
Mm.
But at some point, I ended up taking on a couple students. Like the first one was a resident. She couldn't find a supervisor. She said she mass emailed every physician in North York with a Chinese last name. I was the only one to reply. Right? I said, sure, come work in my clinic for
Mm.
for a month, and it
Mm.
was fun. I found, I kind of like teaching them stuff, and I found that I actually had stuff to teach at this point. So
Mm.
then, I took on a couple more students. I ended up joining the faculty at the University of Toronto, and it started to gain its own momentum. So one year I said, any student that asks me, I will take
Mm.
them on for a month or 3 weeks, whatever they need. And I just found that connecting with younger students and young people in general, it was just really fun. It gave me this extra energy for work. Like the days where I have a student, I'm like exhausted because there's more to do, but also
Mm.
more fired up, right? And,
Yes.
and that was a huge thing for me that started to make me feel like, okay, there's more to the job than just doing the sore throats and like, the whole hum routine. I'm part of something a little bit bigger, right?
Mm.
And that added to it. And then from there, all that other stuff happened where, I started coaching basketball because I thought that was another dream I'd had. But now that I was teaching, I thought, and my daughter's school needed a coach. So I was like,
Mm.
well, I don't know if I can relate to like, teenagers, but let's try and see how it goes.
Yeah.
And it went really well, right? And then I was like, maybe I should do some podcasts. And then, one thing led to another. But I think
Yeah.
the sum of all that is now, the career isn't that draining. It's just, all these pieces add to it to make it a fuller experience.
Nice. I really like that, and I think for a lot of people, when you're not to say it's bad that your job is a big part of your life, but obviously you've kind of defined yourself in other ways outside of being a doctor now. What it sounds like in those 7 to 8 years, right? So
Trying to, at least
yes.
somewhat, at least
Okay.
somewhat. And it's okay to embrace your profession as a doctor
Mm.
also. There's nothing wrong with
Mm.
that. Yeah.
Mm. That's fair. All right. The last question is: what are some words of wisdom you try to live by?
Mm, most basically, I think you have to work hard at whatever it is you try to do. There's no substitute for that. So, every person in the world that's successful, if you look at their story, at some point they worked like crazy. So you
Mm.
can't replace work. Sometimes you can get away with a little bit of luck and stuff here and there, but work comes first. That's one. The other one is just try to treat people well. Be mindful of how you want to be treated and how you would feel in certain situations if you were in the other person's shoes. I think that's an easy way to live by.
Yeah, good words of wisdom. Okay, Dave, can you just let everyone know where we can find your podcasts?
Okay, you can find the 3 shows, What's Up Docs, Unique Stories with David M. Hsu, and Medical Dads are all on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. So it should be easy to find.
All right, awesome. Well, Dave, thanks again for joining me today. I had a really good time chatting with you and learning more about you.
No problem, Spencer. It was my pleasure.
All right, everyone, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you have not already done so. Comment below. Let me know who I should reach out to for an interview. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.